In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloodied but unbowed. I'm Howard Feldman. Imagine if I were sensitive. Well, this no, it's a big thing. Gareth Cliff joins me in a studio today for my first podcast of Imagine If I Were Sensitive. And you know what? I don't know if it's an insult or a compliment to you, but you were the guy that I had to have for the first episode of this.
I'm honored. Thank you, Howard. I really am.
Don't rush into that. No. But I'll tell you what this is about for me is finding people around us that have the courage to say, do, act in a world that actually is discouraging any form of uniqueness, any form of just anyone standing up to something a little bit differently. And you are somebody that has done that constantly. Are you sensitive?
No, I don't think I am. I also don't, I'm not consciously trying to be different, I promise.
Okay.
I mean, there may have been a stage in my 20s where I was a bit of an attention seeker, and that probably propelled me into media. But now, if anything, it's just part of what I am. I don't attach too much importance to it because it causes as much trouble as it gets good things.
What does?
Being
different.
Individual,
Right.
being having a sense of your own sovereignty.
Right. I think that's more what it is, because it's actually not about saying, well, the whole world is saying that, I'm going to say that.
Yeah.
It's about
I'm not
trusting
contrarian for the sake of it. Sometimes I think I might have been, but not anymore. Now it's too much effort to do. You get lazy, right? So I don't mean lazy as in you don't have the energy to put an effort into things that matter, that you care about. But you become lazy about, you choose, you're very judicious about, like, am I going to go to the trouble of having an argument with this person or making a point about this? Actually, I don't think I'll ever see them again. I think I can get away with just being quiet this time. So that's new. That's happened maybe in the last 10 years.
Because
10 years.
On my way here, I was thinking about that, because I often, something will come my way, and in a way I'm referred to in our community on certain issues, and I often think to myself, do I want to take this on? Really, you know what? I don't want to be the complaints department, because that's what it can be as well. I can't take it all on. What is it worth it or not? Maybe I should just shut up this time.
Yeah, not every fight needs to be yours.
Yeah.
And actually, where the hell are the other people who are constantly saying, yeah, Howard, it's so great that you speak out. You're like, well, why don't you? Like, that's nice of you to say. And I know you think you're complimenting me, but sometimes this is also exhausting and you could do your bit. Like, how about you stand up for things? How about you say what you think instead of hiding behind the parapet walls and then applauding me when the tomatoes come flying at my face? Like,
if only they were tomatoes.
Give it a go,
would also be fine.
And I would love to see more people doing that, because to me that's an expression of real freedom. Like, when you can say what's on your mind and you can do what you say, you're free. And name a better prize than that?
So isn't that it is an incredible thing. Since I am able to say these things, I do have a great sense of freedom. You want to call me a Zionist as though it's an insult. I am a Zionist. I'm actually quite happy with that. That's cool. So it's fine. It's no longer an insult, because I just own what I am. And I don't want to make it about that, but it's just such an interesting time where what's going on in the Middle East is definitely something that is very, it's almost distilled some of these things that we've been dealing with, and someone like you has been dealing with for many years, not necessarily about this issue, but about every other issue that's led to this.
Well, I said it to you off air, but we're recording this in the middle of Pesach, so Chag Sameach. And of course, what a perfect time for the enemies of Israel to do a drone attack all the way from Tehran. Apparently, their drones are so slow that it took them like 9 hours.
Oh, shame. Shame. One
What
feels
a Rahmanis.
bad.
9 hours to get there. I mean,
One does feel bad.
look,
one does feel
yeah,
bad.
you feel bad, except that you realize these people have actually got murderous intention.
Yes.
And
always
then I
have
don't
had.
feel so bad.
Yeah, no. of course.
And actually, I wish their drones were even worse. But I think it's apposite that a shitty country like that should have shitty drones. And long may the Iron Dome last.
Yeah.
And may every Israeli be protected from this obvious affront to decent human beings just trying to go about their lives.
So what's fascinating to me about this is that many of our South African liberals, and in fact, I saw a tweet by Zaki Ahmad yesterday, which was so convoluted and acrobatic in its process.
Can I just force you to say leftists rather than liberals? Because I think
Yes, I do think of myself as a liberal, actually. So
I think
it's true.
I don't know all your feelings on this, but I think you and I are largely liberal on most social issues.
For sure.
To go back to
Fine.
Zaki Ahmed.
Okay, so there was a tweet that he wrote yesterday where he honestly fell over himself trying to distinguish between Iran and the regime, but then still hating on Israel, but understanding them attacking Israel. It was so convoluted. I mean, he had to lie down after he wrote that tweet, because this is where we're at. And I always think when it's so complicated that you need to use a word salad to try and maneuver your way. That's a whole lot of mixed metaphors.
No, but I got you. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Then we're in trouble.
But you know why? It's because the ideological purity test is that the more ridiculous the position, the purer you are as an ideologue.
Right.
So people, and I don't mean to beat up on Zaki Ahmad here.
No.
But there are so many people on the left who are forced to espouse cognitive dissonance as a part of their religion, their ritual of being leftist. So they force themselves into like squaring the circle and trying to drive a round peg into a square hole and all of these things. It's well nigh impossible for a cogent, sensible, rational, reasonable human being to be expected to do this mental gymnastics. And yet they have to do it because that's what their side expects of them. And you know what? It's fine. They're gonna go cuckoo, and I'm here for the show.
Well, I mean, if you think about the presidents of the Ivy League universities,
Oh my God!
it was a circus. That was a show.
They were trying their very best to allow just enough anti-Semitism.
Oh, do you think that's what it was?
Oh no! Well, I mean, clearly that's become a very
no. It's very in right now.
of course.
Anti-Semitism is all the rage.
It's back
Yes.
with a vengeance.
Yes.
You
Yes,
know,
these things do.
It's like Marvel movies. They have their cycle.
Exactly. Bell
Except
bottoms.
this is
right.
a far more frightening Marvel movie than any of the ones that they've managed to drum up in Hollywood. But you know, these guys are meant to be leading institutions where you encourage young adults, especially, to think for themselves. Instead, they've turned into indoctrination camps. And the people who are running those indoctrination camps are leftists who buy the whole victim hierarchy and wokeness and queers for Palestine and all of this bizarre shit. And then they also want to be able to pander as much as possible to that part of the student body. And then when you call them out on free speech or on anti-Semitism or any of the other things that they're patently and evidently guilty of, then they try to backpedal, but just enough they can please both constituents. You can't.
It's impossible.
You can't. You either...
Because you have to stand for something.
Well, or you fall for everything.
Or you don't, yeah.
And clearly they're happy to fall for everything. And a lot of these people have been shown up to be just spineless and weak-willed.
Yeah.
And actually quite morally and ethically unmoored.
What I also found interesting about it is that outside of the world that they constructed, they looked moronic.
Yeah, of
any
course.
normal person watching
but bear
these
in mind,
conversations...
we're all a little bit responsible here because we've allowed these Ivy League universities, particularly in the US, but also Cambridge, Oxford, these places that have become havens for this kind of non-think, I mean, it's ironic that universities of all
yeah.
places should be the breeding grounds for stupidity, but they are. And they're churning out more and more stupid people and more useless people every year. And we've allowed that because we've allowed their reputation to remain unassailable. Only now, and
So
again,
isn't that interesting?
it took the Jews.
Yeah.
Only
Doesn't it
now,
always?
when something as ugly as anti-Semitism should come up, will we start to recognize all the other things they've been doing that are stupid too. Because, again, no thanks to what happened in the 1930s in Europe, but it does seem to still represent a line which we should try our best in polite society not to cross. And when those universities did that, it opened up the floodgates, and now we can criticize them for all the other rubbish. The fact that they penalize Asian American students because they're too clever, the fact that they don't want white people to do well, the fact that they don't like Jews. All of this is now evident. And, a lot of it comes from white people in these universities who espouse these left-wing ideas that you were talking about at the beginning and have never been called out on them because they're in the hermetically sealed bubble of the university. And we've allowed them to just carry on and remain thought of highly in society. Outrageous.
Well, to some extent, it's a continuation of identity politics. The university themselves, because it's got that stamp of credibility, it's almost ranked from an identity perspective, and everything goes. So
yeah, but there's this funny thing that's happened in the world, and I don't want this to be misconstrued as some kind of attack on women. It's perhaps an attack on
no, some of
feminism.
my best friends are women.
It's not an attack on women. It may be an attack on feminism, but I think we have been feminized as a culture in the West to the degree now where there's an abundance of performative compassion. It's not real compassion, but it's performative compassion. It's people who do and say compassionate things in order to seem like nice people. It's more important that you are seen to be a nice person than that you actually are. And that is an awful, awful fountain, a wellspring from which all of this ugliness comes, because it's inherently, it's a female characteristic to be compassionate, to think about the underdog, to care about people who are downtrodden in society, and to try and lift those who are most vulnerable. That's absolutely a female instinct, and thank God for it, or humanity would not have made it to where we are. But an abundance of that can be as pathological as an abundance of violence on the other side.
That's so interesting. I've never thought of it that.
And where you get an abundance of compassion, inevitably it will be followed by an abundance of violence.
So it's the balance. And that's what we don't have.
You have to have a bit of both. And now, of course, words are violence. Everything's violence. So a young boy can't take part in martial arts lest he be accused of toxic masculinity.
Are we still using toxic masculinity?
I hope not. I don't. I've never used it. But
no, I can't. Well, you just have, but I mean, not in the sense that
I've never used
it was intended.
I've never used it in my life.
Right.
And this is also why I get really annoyed at those kind of Me Too type things that happened just a short while ago, where all men were lumped into the same category. Can you imagine if I did that with all women? I did that with all black people.
Well, again, we've just seen the
Jews.
hypocrisy, because we've had the mass rape and sexual assault of women on the Gaza border by Hamas. It was documented. They recorded it. But many feminist movements, and I've spoken...
turn a blind eye.
Oh, completely. Yeah. I've spoken to many women within the gender studies departments in Israel and said their sister organizations have turned their backs on them, because it just didn't fit into this whole... I don't know who designs this, but it is designed, and everything has to fit into it. I mean, they talk about intersectionality, but it so isn't.
No, it's made up.
It's a complete fiction.
It's made up, and you only ever see the true colors when it comes to politics. What it is about trying to manipulate people by identity politics to vote a certain way. That's all it is. So at its most cynical, it is just trying to force people to vote by group, which is no different to what Verwoerd tried to achieve with apartheid. People mustn't throw around the word apartheid and rightly it deserves
course.
the ire that it has received as a term. But they mustn't throw that around in connection with Israel and then expect me to take them seriously when they believe in identity politics, when they believe that people should be classified according to their victim status or how
exactly
brown
what
they
it is.
are or how poor they are or how communist or capitalist they are.
I was called ableist the other day
By who?
by a feminist who I might have called her a lunatic in her defense.
She might have been.
No, she definitely is. I don't think there's that. But but she said, ableism isn't what we we don't value that anymore. I think we should personally, but okay, that's maybe a whole different. It was just.
I mean, there are some jobs that I'd kind of prefer someone who's able-bodied to do.
Yeah.
Firefighters. I mean, you can scream from the wheelchair all you like at the bottom of the building, but I'd actually like someone to go up and rescue the baby, and that's going to be hard in a wheelchair.
Yes.
So, and we all have strengths and weaknesses.
Of course.
I might not be useful in a great many situations.
These
But,
are Jewish hands. They've never fixed a thing in their life. I promise you. You don't want me attending to your
Don't
plumbing.
you smear all Jews by
You're
saying,
right.
Yeah.
You're right. What am I, an anti-Semite now? Look, I've been accused of worse. Actually, probably that's something they'd be happy with. But anyway, let's. Is there anything that when we speak about what does upset you? When if is there something?
You work pretty hard these days to upset me because I'm actually a very happy guy. I mean, people mistake my passion for certain subject matter, whether it's politics, or religion, freedom, free speech. They mistake that passion for being an anger, some kind of boiling resentment or whatever it is. I get passionate about these things, but I assure you, 2 minutes after we've had that conversation, I've completely moved on. And I don't get upset about things very easily now. I get a little bit sad about certain things. I see a lot of litter around South Africa and I see how we've polluted our rivers and I see how many people are standing on the street like begging. And that saddens me. But I don't get upset to the point that I used to. I mean, I used to get upset about everything. Fat people would annoy me, and and inequality would bother me, and unfairness would bother me. I don't think I get upset about
personally?
those things anymore.
I mean, is there something?
I'm talking
that,
personally.
But I'm talking, which I hear because that is the it is. It's disappointment really in what could have been around us and what isn't.
I think South Africans have every right.
We didn't need to be like this.
Yeah, we have every right to be disappointed because I've seen countries that have a lot less going for them than we do, that are doing much better than we are. And I was watching with great interest what Javier Milei is doing in Argentina, and I think there are always a better and a worse path that a country could choose, and Argentina finally, after having chosen worst path after worst path after worst path, has finally got to a point where they've decided, all right, well, that's completely screwed up our lives. Let's try this way. And it's bearing fruit. He's only been president of Argentina for what? A couple of months.
Not even.
And he's already turned inflation around. He is creating jobs. He's slashed the government budgets. The department's right down. I think he's got
Hasn't had a
9
haircut. He hasn't had, okay.
9 ministries. I mean, the guy's
yeah.
doing a superb job.
is.
So there are examples like that we could follow. Singapore is often brought up. I don't want to be accused of colonialism like Helen Ziller was, but actually Singapore is a great example of what we could be as a country. But instead, we decided to become this this banana republic, and it does annoy me. It's like missed opportunities annoy me.
How hopeful are you for a change in government at the end of May?
I've thought about it. I've interviewed quite a few politicians in the last little while and in the run-up to the elections, and I think I'll have spoken to the majority of them by the time I get to there. I'll be chock full by then. Can you imagine that much bullshit in one year so far?
Yeah,
it's not even a year,
of
it's a
God
few
by
months.
any of us, yeah.
I think I might just be a single or even a 2-issue voter. I'm really interested in devolution of power. I'm interested in local government because on the average day or month, you don't really interact with national government at all, right? You sometimes see a blue light brigade go past you, or
very quickly.
but you don't really, unless you turn on the news and you fixate on the news like so many old people, including my father, like to do, and then they shout at the TV. I hardly watch any TV, so that doesn't really affect me. I don't go on Twitter for news, although it can be useful for that, I understand. I don't think that government should affect us at national level, even at provincial level.
Well, as long as their strategies are solid.
Well, the less they have and the less budget they have, the better. The local government's the one I'm interested in. And I really want that to work. And so I don't care about who the president is. Like I do, but I don't care that much about who the president is. I'm more interested in who my local councillor is. I'm interested that I have her number.
Right.
And that when there's a problem,
that you have somebody to contact.
And I know she's going to do something, right? And if I can't get that, then why am I putting the president on the agenda? What am I going to do about him?
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way, because we normally start off there. We worry about that, but not actually worry about what you're talking about, the litter in the streets.
Well, there are two subjects that everyone in South Africa feels empowered to talk about. And both of them are actually really boring. The one is politics, because it's there's no barrier to entry, right? But
it's true, like Twitter.
Well, yeah, it's so pedestrian that any ignoramus can come on, volunteer an opinion, and it's valid because we all have a vote. And the other thing is sport, and I've never been interested in sport either.
I mean, I'm probably remedial when it comes to
I don't have anything to add. Like, I really don't. When people start talking about sport, I just go, look, I'm really not your guy. I'll just get out of here. Clear the way, let other people in. So I don't think it's very useful to talk about the president and to talk about Parliament until you've got your local council sorted. And I've been to 1 or 2 local council meetings. I will never go again because it's an absolute disaster. I mean, just people shouting at each other, and I don't know what gets done there. But
well, look at Joburg and tell us.
But I've been, and now that I've had the experience, I'm willing to kind of talk about it. But party politics. I've never been to a political rally. Have you? Have you ever been to one of those things where they give you a T-shirt and a
No
lunch?
one gives me anything, I find.
So
that's what I find.
So why? I don't want to give them airtime. Waste too much of my precious energy worrying about them.
So what keeps you up at night?
No, nothing. I sleep like a baby.
That's brilliant. That's very, very
I sleep
nice.
very well. And
yes.
And when I don't, it's entirely my fault. It's because
you're watching something.
No, it's because I'm enthusiastic about stuff. So
in a good way.
I design buildings for fun. I read an enormous amount. I listen to podcasts. I'm always busy. I'm never bored. So if I'm tired, it's my own fault for staying awake instead of forcing myself to go to sleep. And I love that feeling of getting home at the end of a busy day, and you're just tired, and you go straight to sleep. Because if my brain, which for better or for worse is active at night, I'm not going to get to sleep easily. But it's not because I'm worried.
You on air 6 to 8. So do you battle with that to get going?
I made a rod for my own back. When we started Cliff Central 10 years ago, I could have gone on in the afternoons, but I'm an idiot. So I chose
the morning.
Well, it was partly because I didn't want to disrupt even more the relationship that I had with the audience I was taking across from radio. And I thought, look, I'm already asking them to go on the internet. I'm already asking them to use different devices to listen to me. I'm already asking them to change certain aspects of their morning routine and behavior. I got to meet them halfway and at least keep the time the same. Which I did. But look, I'm getting to a point steadily where I'm like, less is more. We started off doing 5 days a week, 3 hours a day.
Right.
Of solid
What
talk.
was that, 6 to 9?
Yeah, solid talk. Wow, so no commercial breaks.
Whoa.
No sport, news, traffic, weather, music. Solid 3 hours of talk a day, which was 15 hours a week.
That's a lot.
It's a fortune. It was way too much. Oversupply, not enough demand, if you ask me.
Right.
And then we cut that down, and currently I'm doing 4 days a week for 2 hours a day, which is much better. I think we can get that down even more. I'm getting ever closer to that golden zero.
But in fact, it's quite interesting because you were definitely unquestionably the leader in this field, certainly here in South Africa. And I would even argue in many parts of the world, podcasts have now become, and internet radio is now becoming a thing. You led this pack. How nervous were you to do that? How worried were you about it?
I wasn't, but it's fair to say that my business partner, Rena Brumberg, was. And she's always been the one to bear that.
Right. So you outsourced the worry.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Well, I did outsource the worry, but also, she's like my Jewish mother. So,
oh, gosh. Right.
So
look, everybody should have one.
I get my fair amount of negative emotion back occasionally.
That's exactly.
Right?
The guilt. Yeah.
We all know the guilt.
What she's only done for you.
But I'm proud of what we've done. And I'm proud we did it here in South Africa, because people have often said to me, why didn't you go to America, do things there? And, you've mentioned this global thing. And I do feel like we're all part of the world. We're not just isolated here in South Africa. But this is where I can make the biggest difference. And I know the audience, and I know the terrain, and I know the language, and I know the culture. And there's, to me, something I wouldn't want to give up about all of that. And it's been a hell of a ride. I mean, 10 years feels like 5 minutes if you catch me on a good day.
It's been 10 years.
10 years. On May 1st, it'll be 10 years.
Wow. That's incredible.
It's lots of fun.
And what are you reading?
Right now, I'm reading a book by Mary Beard called Emperor of Rome. Mary Beard is a very famous classical historian. She's written a ton of books. She's also done a couple of lovely documentaries on TV about life in ancient Rome, the personality of the people who ruled. And this is an interesting book because it's not chronological. And she goes through stories about the emperors. I mean, there's some wild and wacky stories there that are just spectacular.
Yeah.
And I've always been a massive fan of history. So reading this is like eating dessert for me.
Oh, wonderful.
And she's terrific. It happens to be a signed copy, which someone gave me as a gift, which I really like because I collect books as well.
Oh, okay.
So this is like the best
beautiful.
of everything.
They couldn't do better than that.
I actually can't wait to get home. Can we finish this?
Yeah, right, we'll finish.
Can we finish this so I can get home and finish reading?
Let's
wrap it up, Howard.
Yes,
That's enough. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
No, I need one more question. Well, actually,
no, I'm kidding. You don't
No,
have to.
no. One thing I've done.
It's your show. I'm not going to tell you what to
take people
do.
that seriously. Have you, everybody always, and I actually kind of find it annoying that people always say, what have you learned from your biggest failures? I want to know what you've learned from success.
Oh my God. I don't feel like I've been shoot the lights out successful. I think that's something I still want to do.
Do you say that?
I mean, it's not fake humility.
No, because you didn't strike me as somebody as being.
No, and I don't. I don't wake up in the morning and go, "Yes, you're everything you wanted to be."
You don't do affirmations. What?
No.
How have you got so far?
I'm very Gen X. Hey, I don't do any of that stuff. I'm like, what shit do I have to deal with today?
Right, exactly. Bring it on.
But I don't feel like I've done all the things that I want to do yet, and I also don't feel like I've done everything as well as I could have yet. I certainly done my best, and in certain, I always think of that line that Sean Connery used in The Rock.
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage says to him, "I'll do my best," and then Sean Connery looks at him and goes, "Your best. Losers always whine about their best. Winners go home and fuck the prom queen."
I love it. Yeah.
And I often think, yeah, I've done okay. There are definitely things that I could have done better in my life, and I don't regret them or sit there and dwell on it. But I feel like the best is yet to come. I really do. Like, this has just been.
Have you ever known very clearly what the dream is, or have you integrated your experience, what's happening around, and looked forward that way?
This is a very important question because this is something we've all tangled with. I'm sure that everyone who's listening to this will feel the same way. It's that line between contentment and ambition, right? You're always a little bit ambitious for the things you don't yet have, that you haven't yet done, and that keeps you moving forward. And then at the same time, you can acknowledge along the route that you are happy, that you have reached a level of personal satisfaction, or at least circumstantial happiness, where you can go, life is good. Like I feel like I haven't murdered anyone. I haven't lied and stolen from the government. I haven't willfully gone out of my way to hurt anybody. I don't carry guilt and hatred. And I'm lucky. I'm like, I wake up every morning and I wouldn't want to be anyone else. So that does sound a little self-absorbed and self-conceited and all of those things.
Yeah.
It is a happiness that I've never earned. I'm very lucky. And I know we deal these days with a lot of people who are dealing with depression and anxiety and serious mental health issues and not so serious ones that have been made to look like they're serious. But I'm very fortunate. Whatever the brain chemistry that goes on in my head, it's got me waking up with a smile, even at 4:30 in the morning.
That's amazing.
And it's got me going to sleep at night without any resentment, which is very, very lucky. I'm probably in a vanishingly small percentile of people who have just been born. I'm just lucky. I didn't earn it. I did nothing to deserve it. And I feel desperately sorry for people who experience day-to-day gnawing depression, because I can't imagine. I've never felt what that's like. So there's that, but then there's also this burning ambition to keep doing, to push, to confront, to learn. I mean, I'm endlessly curious, and that's just never going to go away. I'll never reach a point of total contentment where, okay, now I know enough, I've done enough, I've got enough. I drop 4 lists every year of, I don't do like New Year's resolutions, but I drop 4 lists. 3 people I want to meet, 3 places I want to go, 3 things I want to do, 3 things I want to buy. I mean, 3 things you want to buy is easy. Could be a nice shirt. Could be, a better phone. Whatever.
Right,
Could be could be something big.
Yeah.
Could be like I want to buy an apartment in France one day. You might not get it done in a year, but it's on your list.
Right.
Then the 3 people you want to meet could be a long lost relative that you haven't seen in ages that you want to reconcile with. It could be a famous person who you want to learn something from. It could be an author of a book that you just love. It might be somebody who lives a completely different life to you, a prostitute, someone you want to meet.
Who wouldn't want to meet? Yeah.
Well, some people have to pay for the privilege. And then the 3 things you want to do could be go up in a hot air balloon, which I still never have done. Could be build something really cool out of Lego, whatever it might be. And then the 3 things, the 3 places you want to go are, these are, everyone can give you 3 places they want to go, but it doesn't have to be expensive or far. It could be something like wake up really early and see the mist rising off the Vaal River before.
From a hot air balloon.
From a hot air balloon would be even better. But it could be something around the corner, man. It could be get up and take your mom for a coffee on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
And
I love that because it's attainable. It focuses us in different areas, in different, and it's a great way of just looking forward to something. And maybe that's where a lot of the negativity comes from, is because we almost wait for these things. There's this environment of waiting for these things just to happen to us, rather than saying, well, how am I going to actualize
Well, we
this?
always go, when I get this, I'll be happy. When I do that, I'll be happy. When I have that job, when I live in that house, when I'm engaged to this person, Like, come on. You're wasting all this time in between. What is it? All just a preamble, the longest forward to any book ever written?
Yeah.
Get on to chapter 5, 6, 10. Are you buggering around with the forward still?
Do you discard books along the way?
No.
Oh,
That's a big problem.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. We're going to have to talk about that. You make sure you finish a book.
Yeah. I know. Look, I have occasionally decided that I've never really been able to finish a couple of books, and this is some of these you'll probably have. Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. I've never been able to finish that.
Never either.
Frustrates the hell out of me. I get to a point where in the book I'm like, I've read this 3 times, I still don't understand it.
Yeah. I was the same with that.
Hawking's, what's it called?
I didn't try that.
Explaining the Universe or whatever it is.
I know which one you're talking about.
Again, I could read it another 10 times. I'm not going to get any closer to understanding. I just don't think I'm smart enough to get there. And then I don't read a lot of story books. And more is the pity, because when you find a good one, man, is it fantastic. But
I'm
not in
crime.
Oh, really? Is that what you do?
Well, fiction, I like cozy crime. Other non-fiction,
You're punishing yourself for.
No, it's so wonderful. These little old ladies, they're always old. I don't know what it is. It's bloodless murders. It's use of poison. It's Agatha Christie. It's bored. No, you know what? Don't judge me for it. Don't make me feel bad about it.
No, I think
I don't.
This is a bad thing for a Jew to do, is to be reading about crime.
You think so?
Well, I think there's a lot of genetic anxiety.
That is true.
And I think with the trauma and the
can I tell you what
post-traumatic
happened?
stress disorder, and now you're punishing yourself with crime.
We were in Plet, and we were on the Keerbooms River, and we rented these little boat things, and we stopped at this rock, and my kids say, all these other kids are like scampering up and jumping off, and my kids say, can we do that? I say, yeah, sure. And they go, but very gingerly, very nervously, and then leave the Havianas and come. It's eventually they had to jump because there was queues of Afrikaans kids waiting behind them, and they came back to the boat and they said, like, what is wrong with us? And I said that because we didn't survive Hitler's Europe to die jumping off a rock on a Keerbooms River. Yeah. It's not who we are. We are genetically...
How are you spot on?
It's just like we're genetically programmed to avoid jumping off a random rock in a river just because.
And it's smart. But you could...
it's not healthy, it's low muscle tone, it's all sorts of things.
But you could also be missing out on some fun,
For sure. Fun. There's no time. Okay.
Oh, come on, you've got to make time for fun.
I
think about that kind of thing often because we know there's all this new information is coming out about epigenetics and how people do actually carry
there's no doubt.
Stuff over generations, right? And I often think about how my grandfathers, both of whom fought in that war against Hitler.
They were here?
They were so they were in Europe.
Okay.
My father's father was involved in the bombing of Italy.
Wow.
And he also fought in North Africa.
Incredible.
And my mother's father fought in Europe and in North Africa. And I mean, they were both decorated soldiers, so they came out of there with impressive records and did us proud. But I often think if they hadn't made it, I wouldn't be here. My parents wouldn't be here. It'd be a very different story. I mean, one bullet goes astray, or the pilot doesn't put in the coordinates right in his actual written logbook, and you end up with problems. But I often think there's a certain amount of like excitement and adventure that previous generations it was built in. Like part of the adventure was the danger, right? And I don't think that it's always been this thing that you're talking about, this genetic anxiety. I think even for Jews, it wasn't always. But I do think there's an enormous amount of extra
baggage.
If your people have been hated for being...
We're hypervigilant.
I mean, of course, because you never know where the next shit's coming from.
We're starting to get a sense. Yeah.
Well,
and
anyone who doesn't think so just needs to look at how that has gone over 5,000 years, because that's how long the history is.
Yeah. Well, that's what people say to me. Aren't you worried about how you're being attacked on social media? And because people call me all sorts of names. And I say, these are new anti-Semites. We've been doing this for thousands of years. Seriously. Somebody calling me...
Have you ever found a new word that you thought, wow, that's creative?
Yeah,
exactly. Are there some nice ones, or are they all the old ones?
No, well, it's just a new dialogue. And now the challenge is you've got to, if it's addressed to me, it's got to be apartheid apologist, genocidal, Zionist, ethnic cleansing. If you could use like all five, like it's a bingo game now.
What happened to Yid and Kaiken? I mean,
But now if they do that, it's K with like a little something in case they get flagged. I don't know.
because it'll get you banned from TikTok, and
Is that what it is?
And even your deep-seated anti-Semitism isn't worth being banned off of
Of course not,
TikTok.
God forbid. But yeah, so that is what.
I don't know if it'll get you banned. By the way, I don't know because I'm not on TikTok.
I'm not on TikTok either. That's just the one thing I just have very little interest
You
in.
got to draw the line somewhere. right?
Exactly.
You can't be everywhere.
Is true.
And TikTok, I can manage pretty well
Yeah.
without.
Yes. I've just had no interest in being in TikTok. So one of my favorite, just to end it, I'm just interested in your thoughts. One of my favorite biblical stories is when the children of Israel have fled Egypt, and they are standing at the Red Sea,
Yes.
and it's chaos in front of them, and they hear behind them the Egyptians are coming, and they're told they need to walk forward because the sea is going to split, and they think, "Are you mad? Absolutely crazy." And one guy does, and he walks forward, and he walks until it gets up to his neck. Well, this is how the story is told, and only when it gets up to his neck does the sea split. And everybody talks about the great faith that this guy has in God. I believe that this guy has greater faith in himself than in God. I mean, God was there, and I don't want to steal his thunder, God forbid. But this guy has faith in himself because he knew that he could do this. In front of us is always, to some extent, a churning ocean. We've got to walk forward. Otherwise, it's not going to split. What do you see for you on the other side? Well, for you, for all of us, for what can be? What is the opportunity that is waiting for us as the sea splits in front of us?
Well, I didn't know the detail of that guy who walked in up to his neck, but I think it's a beautiful addendum to the story that I had been told for years. And I'm not much of a biblical scholar, you'll understand, having been a lifelong
I'm not rabbinic
atheist.
either, so but in fact the rabbis get very nervous when I start giving sermons.
One of my dearest friends is a rabbi. I always say I've got friends who are much younger than me, friends who are much older than me. And one of them is a rabbi, and we often go and have lunch and talk nonsense. And I've found it to be some of the best conversation I've ever had. But yeah, that notwithstanding, I think that this is the best time to be alive. Regardless of all the things we've said about the past, all the things that we hope for the future, like right now is damned exciting. Anything could happen. We have these devices which connect us to the whole world. There's information for any curious mind. This is paradise because I can look up anything. I can find the most bizarre conspiracy theories, but I can also find facts. I can hear stories. I can talk to people. I can meet the people that it would have been impossible for my great-grandparents to meet, not only because they would have been in this far-flung corner of the world, and everybody who they might have wanted to talk to might have been a whole hemisphere away, but also because we live in a time where it is possible for you to do impossible things. And to waste a single moment, either feeling sorry for yourself, claiming some kind of victim identity, trying to make someone else's life a misery, filling your days and nights with hatred and loathing and jealousy and bitterness. To me, this is just such an ungrateful way to behave, because the miracle is that you're alive. You know how many people had to have sex at exactly the right moment, going back 1,000,000 years.
Yeah, there's something to
And
think
before
about.
that, not
Right.
just people, but
you think about
creatures,
that.
primitive creatures that had to have sex at just the right moment for you to exist and for me to exist and to have this conversation.
Right.
The chances, if you won the lottery 1,000,000 times in a row, it wouldn't be as impressive as the chances of us sitting here and having this conversation. And for that reason alone, I am just absolutely delighted to be able to be alive at this time, interact with people, go to places, do things, learn things. Anything less than that is just horribly ungrateful and makes you seem like a small and small-minded person. So get on with it. I mean, you ask what's across the sea. Who the hell knows? But if we don't walk in, we'll never
We'll
know.
never know.
And to sit and complain on the shore, especially when those Egyptians are coming.
Well, Iranians, Egyptians, whatever it would be. Gareth, thank you. I'm Howard Feldman. This has been episode number 1 of Imagine If I Were Sensitive. Subscribe below. And thank you for joining us.